Hi, I'm Brian English, forum name Hyperbytes. We're going to continue this series on Couch and PouchDB. We've already created our Couch database within a cloud container, and we now are going to look at creating an App Connect page which will interface with that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into our site manager and I'm going to create a new page, and I'm just going to call that Notes. There's our page, and then next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to link this page to our Couch database. So all we've got to do is literally click the database icon for PouchDB, select that database connection, and that is the connection made. As simple as that. Now we're going to add a dynamic modal, and what we're going to do is we're going to use that modal to update our information into the database. So how do we do that? Well, let's just do a bit of tidy up here. New note. We're not going to need that close button, so let's just get rid of that. We're not going to need that text there either, so let's get rid of that. What we want to do is add a small form in here, a form that simply adds the two elements of title and content to that PouchDB container. Technically, because we're doing this via a click action, we don't need the form element, but it is advantageous to use a form element purely because it allows us to be able to reset that form much easier to clear any data that is in there. So let's create a couple of entries. Let's create our title, and that in itself is a straightforward text box. Apologize for my typing. I'm just going to use that, remove that footnote, and then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a sorry, we're not going to do that. That's not what I wanted to do. Let's get rid of that. Let's add after. We're going to go into horizontal form group, and actually what we want is a text area, and this text area will be the content. Again, I'm just going to get rid of that. Let's maybe make that a little bit bigger, so we'll make that maybe a large modal. We'll save that. Now what we've got to do is look at how are we going to save that data that has been entered into here into our database. We actually do that with a flow. We attach that flow to a button, so we're just going to change that to add note. Now we're going to create a flow. So sorry, we have a scrolling issue here. We're going to have a dynamic event, mouse, click. We're going to create a flow. In that flow we're going to add an action, a database action, and that's going to be a PouchDB insert. That's going to be into the DB connection, and our insert will be into the notes, and we've got our title and content there. And what we're going to do now is just add the contents of those two boxes that we created before our form 1 and 2. No, I'm not actually going to do this. My apology. I should really have given them meaningful names. So let's just go into that, and this one is going to be title, and this one is going to be content. Now we'll go back in that flow, execute, add action, database, insert into our DB connection. We're going to go into our notes, and then we're going to insert the values that are in those two fields. Should really have used the IDs as well, just to make it a little clearer what they were, but we'll add those values. And then the only other thing we want to do is, once we've actually inserted that data, we want to clear that form. So I'm going to go to flow control, run, and within that we are going to then do a form reset. And then lastly, obviously we need to hide that modal. Save that, close that, and now we should be ready to run that and save the data into the Pouch database. So what we're going to do next, well, I'm going to add here a container, a row and a column. In that first column I'm simply going to add a button, and we're going to call that add note. Let's give it some color. We'll make that a primary button, and the action on that is it's going to open a modal. It's going to open that modal one that we've just created. So that's our methodology of adding a note. Then I'm now going to add another row in here and another column within that. And within this we're now going to add a bootstrap generated table. So to be able to do this, we need to create first of all a PouchDB view. So I'm just going to go into data, and we've got a PouchDB view from that database, the notes collection, and that creates our view for our data. Having created that PouchDB view, we can now use the Bootstrap table generator to be able to generate a table to display the data that we have within that PouchDB view. So selecting the data, we'll give it a bit of treatment, and then we'll OK that. And now if we save that, now we can see we have our title and content shown. We haven't yet added any data. There is also a column here for the ID. We don't really need that. You can happily remove that if you need to do that. So let's first just add a few records to this database. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to pop that open in my web browser. I'm going to add note, and this I'm just going to call note 1. This is a very boring note. And we're going to add that note. And you'll see now that we have that ID, we have the title, and we have the content. We'll just add another one. Notice that form has cleared because we had that form resetting. This is another boring note. Yes, it is very, very boring. Add note. You see now that second note is added, and that has been added to our local Pouch database. So all we need to look now is how to process that, replicate things back to our central database, etc. So now let's just take this a little more slowly, because this is a touch more complicated. The first thing we're going to do now is we're going to add another PouchDB component, and this is called PouchDB detail. Pick the same database and the same collection. There is an auto update feature here, but we're not going to be using that in this stage. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to recognize when the data is stale, when it needs to be updated, and how to deal with that update accordingly. So to deal with this, we're going to need another modal, and it's basically the modal is going to be exactly the same as the previous one. So I'm just going to duplicate that in modal 2. I will tell you that off camera I have cheated while I've been doing this. Now I have updated the IDs to meaningful IDs, as well as the actual names of the fields just so we can recognize things a little better, and they've both been updated to IMPT. So what we're going to do is we're now going to deal with that second modal, and we're going to use that to manage updates and data conflicts. So now we're going to deal with that modal 2. We're going to just make some minor changes. What we're going to do is we're going to change the form into a update form rather than a insert form. We're going to be doing that by pulling some values in from the database into these fields. So the title field, dynamic attributes input value, and we can pick the data detail title from that data detail component. We can now do exactly the same with our second field. So again, dynamic attributes input value, and then we're now going to add that data detail data content into there. So that means that we've now effectively updated that form with the values that are currently residing within the database. We probably should change that title as well to update. So I'll just save that now, and now we can look at the next stage of the processing. I'm just going to quickly, that should be update note as well. And now what we're going to do is we're actually going to go into that modal 2 body, and I'm going to add a conditional region. A conditional region will be displayed. The condition will be when the data detail is stale. In other words, it is changed and it needs to be updated. So I'm just going to save that now. Now let's just add an alert in it here. So within that, I'm going to add that alert, and within the alert we're just going to set it to auto show. I'm going to set it to danger so that that alert shows as soon as the data goes stale. Now lastly, I'm going to add a button after that, and we're going to be using that button to tell people to refresh the data. I'm just going to take that out of App Connect mode so we can see that button. And let's just give that a bit of styling as well. And we'll now save that, and then we're going to see how we're going to manage that changeover. So let's just quickly change the text of that alert. Just so the user knows exactly what the alert is there for. I apologize for my typing. Just going to save that, and now we can use the refresh data button to be able to allow the user to refresh the data if this message is displayed telling them it needs to be so. So on this button, the refresh data button, we're going to add a dynamic event of a mouse click. Now the mouse click, we're going to do nothing more complicated than going to our pouch data detail, and we're going to refresh. That will allow the data to be refreshed automatically from the database. We're going to save that. Obviously, why would that data be outdated? Just remember that we could have multiple users here using the same database, so it might well be that that's been updated by another user somewhere. So the other thing, of course, we need to look at now is updating those details once they've been refreshed. So now we look at the update note action. Remember, we still have a value in there from our previous model because we cloned model 1 into model 2. I'm just going to get rid of that content. Go back in, we'll go execute, add action, database actions. In this case, we're going to do a PouchDB update. From our DB connection, we go into our notes form, and now we're going to be pulling, just as we did before, the bindings for those updates are going to come from the contents of model 2. So we're going to have the value of the title, and we're going to have the value of the content. So there's the details updated. Our condition will be that the ID is equivalent to the table body repeat ID. No, it won't. My apologies. We're not totally wrong there. It's going to be the pouch detail ID. My apologies on that. So there's our condition now, ready for that update to take place. And then obviously after the update, let's just add another action. Let's flow control, let's run, and let's just close that model because we're not going to need to see it anymore. So that's the data update button completed. So we can now look at the next aspect. So now we're going to just link that model 2 to an action. What we're going to do is, for some strange reason, I've lost the data as such in there. It's not showing, but I'm going to select the row, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a click action. So that will be mouse click. We're going to tell it when we click the action, what we want to do is to have that data detail select. And what we want to do is we want to select the document ID that we're going to be dealing with, and we will of course get that from the repeat that we have. So it's not dissimilar to the process of the use of relational databases, where we would pick the table repeat value within that to pop up a model. Really, the principle is exactly the same. So we selected our document ID there, and then once we've done that, we want to show that model 2, so that model is then shown for the user. So let's save that now. Sorry, select. Let's save that now, and I think it's about time that we thought about firing things up in the browser again. So let's fire up the browser. We see we have our notes there. If we click on one of those notes now, we can see that we have those notes there, and if we want to make an update, it is very boring indeed. Update that note, refresh it, close, and we see that the data has been updated there. To show you that again, in case you didn't follow, I'm just going to put a full stop in. We update the note. That data is now stale, so that data is outdated now. So we're going to refresh that data, and then we're going to update the note. For some reason the modal isn't closing at the end of that. I'll have to take a quick look and find out what's going on there. Okay, so a quick look at model 2. We've got update note. Why was that not closing the modal? Let's have a look at our click event and see there actually we've got a modal showing there, where that should of course be a modal hide after the data's updated. We'll save that. We're going to save everything. Let's fire it up in the browser again. Let's open that note, update note, and there we are. That's done exactly as it should have done. It's updated note accordingly. Wait, that note 10. There we are, note 10. So that's our introduction to Pouch and Couch. More to follow as soon as more features are released by the Wappler team.